mean, today I'm heading out for track and field for the evening session, but today has really been a day of catch up. This is the first time that I've not run out in the morning to cover an event. I was going to do skateboarding, but they're also doing it tomorrow morning,
Right.
so I'm going to head for that tomorrow morning, and then in 2 days I'm going to go down to Izu for the velodrome, which ought to be very exciting.
Yeah.
I've never
I
been into one before.
I've been looking through your photographs. I mean, as one of the think tank pros, I followed your work for quite a big long time, but
Thank you.
it's it's really interesting looking at the different photographers that are over in Japan at the moment covering the Olympics, and looking at the different styles and seeing an image. Like, for example, there's an image, the Chinese divers, and you've got two of them in the frame, and they're kind of upside down. But seeing other photographers' images and how all the different photographers capture them differently, it just I mean, I'm not a professional photographer. I'm a professional social media guy. I'm not a professional anything. Let's not kid ourselves. But thinking about how you would get yourself in the right position and how you all do it differently, it just blows my mind. So it's been really interesting following the different photographers that are over in Japan, and the way they're capturing things. Do you, when I talk about capturing things, and this isn't one of the questions I sent you, so I'm glad you.
This doesn't matter. No, no. I like ad libbing. So
It's a conversation. Yeah.
it's exactly well said.
Do you have, when you go into something like this? I mean, you do lots of different styles of photography. Actually, I won't go off on a tangent just yet. I have a terrible tendency to go off on tangents.
Well, I do too. So this ought to be an interesting conversation.
Well, I've got as long as you need.
There you go.
But documentary photography and the Bath, the book, like it's all, to me, it's all kind of different, and I would have to approach it from a different sort of way of thinking. When you're thinking about the Olympics, do you have to think about or be in a certain mindset to go capture these images, or what? How do you prepare?
That's a great question, because the who's who of athletics are here, and sort of the gold medalists of photography as well, or at least of sports photography, are here as well. And so there are no excuses. You have to capture. There's no redos. You can't say, I didn't quite get that. Would you mind diving again? It just doesn't work that way. And so you try to just be literally and figuratively focused and in the moment as best you can. Whereas in the Japanese hot springs, which just so happens I have the book here, since
Nice.
you asked about my association with Japan. But yeah, this is it for those who don't know it. Here, take your time. Everything's about time and quietness, and you don't have and reflection. At the Olympics, everything's fast. The equipment, in fact, I'm very fortunate. Nikon, just like Canon and Sony, have booths so we can check out stuff. And so typically I'm shooting with a Nikon D50 in my think tank bags, but and an 810. But I've borrowed a D6 because speed is everything here. And so the fast continuous focus is incredible. The motor drive, where I hardly ever use motor drive, but here, for, like, as you mentioned, the Chinese divers, it's a split second, and so I have to think in terms of 2000s and 2500ths of a second, and as opposed to when I'm doing the hot springs, where 60th of a second, carefully hand holding with a wider lens. Is here I'm with 500 and 300 millimeter lenses for the most part. As you said at the beginning, there are many photographers here, and I don't know if I want to say I'm consciously looking for different angle, but since I have more flexibility, I am going to some of the lesser covered sports, as well as when I'm going to something that is covered a lot.
Sure.
I'm looking for different angles, and really one of the key things I'm looking at, maybe in all my photography, is looking for patterns
Right.
and things and more abstractions. And so I think some of that might be coming across in what I've posted on Instagram.
Yes.
The uh, the opening shot, which you guys were nice enough to use for the newsletter that went around for
Mm.
our listeners who saw that, of the opening ceremonies. I went and scouted out a location at the National Stadium, at the Olympic Stadium, a few days early, and instead of doing sort of the front on shot where where when they had performances were being sort of played toward that angle, I purposely went for the side where I got the elongated part of the stadium,
Yeah.
because I knew there were going to be fireworks later. And so those are sort of things that you can, and I used a Z7 too for that, with a long exposure, so I could get the fireworks. And so I did have, a preconceived idea going in there, and it was just a matter of, getting the right exposure for it, with fireworks, and having a lockdown position. And so I could do a long exposure. Um, but other times, so you go the exact opposite direction. 2000, of a second, 2005 hundredth of a second seems to be the go-to shutter speed for
Right.
a lot of these sports. And I've only, um, I'm really way behind on the social media aspect in terms of getting images up and out. I've got so many,
Right.
but probably there'll be a consistency of that shutter speed in that frozen moment, because I'm really just so fascinated uh, by all the athletes here, and what they can do with their bodies. And it's amazing to see all the different body types depending on um, the type of athletics they're doing. I mean, you take wrestling,
Right.
or you take female weightlifting one day. And first of all, it's just unbelievable to see the weights. These people are lifting is mind boggling. I sent Deanne um, Fitzmaurice a note earlier, and I think actually the rest of the team, you might have been CC'd on it too, that if not for the rolling bag, I think I might have had to retire from the games early. My back, yeah, just couldn't handle it, and it really did save me. And so when I see these, male and female weightlifters lifting these insane, and my back hurts just watching them. It,
Exactly.
it, it's it's unbelievable. But look at their body type versus the gymnasts, versus the trampolinist that I just posted. There's just so many different body types, but there's a but the but the one thing is, they're all at the best in the world, at their games, and to be in person and to see that. And of course then you see the runners and the speed, and when you're there in person, and you see them fly by or jump by, or fling a javelin, um, it's really something to see in person. And I know when they were in Australia, did you have a chance to go to the games at all?
No. The closest I've been to the Olympics, or well, was the Commonwealth Games actually.
Oh, well, there you go. So a lot of the same people. In fact, last night they kept talking about the Commonwealth Games, like, the winner of the Commonwealth Games and all that. And so, yeah, so you've seen these same athletes. In fact,
Yeah.
one of I think the trampolinist I photographed, because he's from New Zealand, and so I think he was in the Commonwealth Games. I mean, obviously the country was, but
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, one of his awards. But I mean, unbelievable to see on a trampoline the heights uh, that they literally attain. And actually, one of them, even though they have spotters at the bottom with pads, sort of went through somehow, something that I always feared as a kid. When I would jump, 15 feet off. Well, I don't even know
Through the
15, but
strings.
yeah, went through the springs, and I guess he was partially caught at first by the pads, which slowed it down. But I mean, just
That can hurt.
oh yeah,
And I'm speaking from
especially.
personal experience.
Oh, you have, yeah. I mean, I think that's why I that would be too scary for me to do. I remember even back, as a kid, not particularly wanting to do it that much because of that, once or twice, sort of ending up over toward the springs. And so you did it, so
Yeah,
it's not a.
I grew up on a farm out in the middle of Australia, and me and my older brother thought it'd be a really cool idea to jump off the roof of the house onto the trampoline at the same time. And
But yeah, you never think about then where you will go from there.
Yeah. Well, usually one of you goes flying back up, and the other one's legs collapse, and so my legs collapsed, and my head went through the springs. I won't tell you what happened after that, but Mum wasn't happy.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't know if you get hickory sticks or something, but you might have felt the wrath of not to do it again. Well, I actually, you see all the amazing people, doing sailing events and everything here, and kayaking and canoeing and all. When I was a kid, I decided after a rainstorm up in Northern California that my friend and I would try boating down one of the, the city things in our cardboard boat. That didn't go too well, and my grandfather saw to it that I didn't do that again.
The things we did as kids, like I think about the things we did as kids growing up, and I think about the things that kids do now, and I'm surprised we're still alive sometimes.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, I mean, I sort of the things I continue to do. I never grew up. In fact, my
there you go.
ex-wife, who I'm still super, super close with, she's back in Japan actually, but she said to me, she goes, "When are you going to grow up?" And I said, "Well, what happens when you take the boy out of the man?" She goes, "Well, you have a man." I said, "Wow, I can't even beat you. English is her second language," and she still beat me on that one. So
and that was a bit of a mic drop moment.
it was great. It was great. It was, but she actually is a tea master now, and I'm helping her. We're working on a book together because that it's interesting because there is a parallel between athletics and the tea ceremony here, where the whole thing of tea ceremony teaches you about being in the moment.
Yes,
and so athletes have to be. I mean, to see Simone yesterday, doing the beam, and after she's had some issues where I think she's sort of lost that being in the moment sort of thing, and then your mind really goes off. I mean, just like I was covering golf the other day. How do you hit a golf ball toward a green and get just a couple of feet away when millions of people are watching you on TV, not in person, obviously these days.
Sure.
You have to be in the moment, and things like the tea ceremony, it's all about that. And in sports, you see that. And Simone yesterday was back, I think, in the zone, and they had a great sports psychologist that she said she worked with.
Right.
To get you there, because I think you can lose, and all of a sudden you become too aware of the outside world, and you see, and I think that's part of the fun when you freeze it with the super fast shutter. You get to see these expressions on their faces and the zones, and so that's something else that I'm looking for is expressions, eyes, because it's so fleeting, not necessarily seeing it at the time, but and that's one of the cool things is if you shoot video and you play it back in slow motion, let's say I have the special slow motion cameras that are shooting super fast frame rates, you don't quite get to see that. But with a still frame and analyzing it, you just see that they're right in there.
Totally fine. Yeah.
I mean, jumping over a hurdle, Norwegian runner yesterday broke the 400 record.
Yeah.
And in this, I guess it's called the steeple jump, I think, and so, but it's a 400, and just imagine running as fast as you can and then jumping over these things.
I know. Yeah. I'd end up stuck on a fence or something. That would be, I'd be done.
No, exactly. That would be it. And some do. It's
Oh,
amazing. I
sure.
mean, as everybody watching the Olympics, you're seeing a lot of people are going down. My friend David Burnett is here covering the Olympics, and he shot it, in 1980,
Mm, mm.
uh, the 84 Olympics in LA. Mary Decker down,
Yes.
because she was tripped up by a South African runner, and these things happen. These people are super pros, but or actually couldn't be pro back then, but super amateurs, super well, now they're pros too. But anyway, they're at the best of their games, and they still literally trip up
Yeah.
and at full speed. That's incredible.
Now you
Uh,
mentioned David. Are
yeah,
you? I mean, you guys, like, they're the elite athletes, but you guys are all top of your game, and so I assume that you wander around a venue and you know a lot of the other photographers. Is it like a bit of a reunion? I mean,
it's a definite reunion. It's
yeah.
fantastic. I mean, last time I saw David was in January in Washington D.C., and that's when we had the inauguration. But
Oh, yeah.
also, I was there a bit earlier for Newsweek to do something with my friend Nick Oot, who did the picture of the little girl hit by napalm,
Oh, for
who
his
David was with.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, but David was at Trang Bang,
Mm.
uh, as he always acknowledges, rewinding his film when Nick shot that photo, and they're great friends. And so and then I saw so many photographers that I know in DC, and those are more, the photojournalists covering that sort of news, and then you have a lot of the sports photographers here, but there are some, crossovers. Obviously I'm here, David's here, Joe McNally's here, Matthew Jordan Smith, uh, uh, Paul Kitagaki. Uh, there's just so many people
Yeah.
I know here, and so yeah, it really is sort of a reunion
Right.
of things, and early next year there's going to be the Olympics in Beijing, and it will be the same, and we're all, or most of us are freelance, and so it really is nice to have these opportunities to catch up in person,
Absolutely.
because I mean,
And-
well, the reality is, I mean, so I'm in my room now, it's often, going to Lawson or Family Mart or 7-Eleven and picking up an Obento box, at 10:30 at night, and eating with one hand and editing with the other.
right. Yeah.
Uh, it's and David had actually, I don't know if warned is the right word, but sleep is something you could do in September. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Save it up. You'll be right.
yeah, exactly.
And
And
is that so? Sorry, if you're popping back and editing late at night and getting your images to wherever they need to be. But is that? I mean, how much of an effect is COVID having? You would be doing that normally anyway. You've got a file when you're on the job. So would that be kind of normal for you in a non-COVID kind of world, or is that, would there be a bit more mingling kind of thing going on?
that's an excellent question. There are press rooms set up at all the venues, and so some people are filing from there. I prefer to come back here, and others do. I think if you're part of a big group like there's people from Sports Illustrated here and Getty Images, they might tend to do it. Well, actually, they're doing it wired in, a lot of them,
Of
and it's
course, so
going
it's
out
real
right.
time.
Exactly.
Right.
Um, uh, but I would say, COVID or not, this would probably be the way that's to do it. There's so many protocols going on here. I'm past my 14 days, and so I have a rail pass
Ah,
or a metro pass, so I can move around very, very quickly. So I don't have to take special taxis, which
buses.
they had
Yeah.
set up for the first 2 weeks, or buses. So that's why I think in part I can move around quickly. I came over on July 8th, and I'm going to stay to September 8th because I want to stay through the Paralympics.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, and as when we talked
Yeah.
earlier and communicated, I do have a long association with, Japan, also covering the tsunami here.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, I speak decent Japanese. It depends who you're
Oh,
speaking with. Some people
right.
might say it's indecent Japanese, but I've worked hard at it for a long time, and I think it has opened up a lot of doors. And I do love the culture and the
That was one
people.
question that I was going to ask you. You know, you've covered a lot of stuff in Japan, and where did that? I'm going to call it a love affair because I look at your images
Mhm.
of Japan, and that's what I feel. You know, the bath book, the bath images, I feel peace. The tsunami, actually, that was what I was referring to before. There's one image that we've got on your pro team page on the think tank website that I haven't. You know, it's the one with the massive boat stuck on top of the building.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen that boat. And I was talking to my friend Lee earlier and saying, well, what should I talk to Mark about? And then I was looking at that image and I realized that underneath the back of that boat, there is a big fishing boat that puts into perspective just how big that boat is and the house
No.
sitting on top of. That's just, I mean, that whole thing just blew my mind. But where does Japan start for you?
Well, it's interesting for that boat on top of the Tsuchi is sort of the iconic image, not necessarily mine, but a lot of people photograph that. I think
Sure.
my angle by climbing on the seawall to sort of get, once again, whenever I can, I really compositionally like to um, have things in balance and look for patterns.
Yes.
I don't think in this rule of thirds kind of thing. It's whatever works for the image. But I felt that I asked for project a lot, and I think, okay, well, instead of just shooting from here, this is where I happened to be when I first saw it, and it's like, wow, that's unbelievable. But and da 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 da. Now let's not do that. That boat's not going to go anywhere for a while. So why don't I just really look around? Where's the best place to shoot this from? And I thought, okay, if I can get up on that seawall and shoot straight at it, it will give a better perspective. And then you can see right that other boat and to see
Yeah, I know. It's
this
wild.
huge boat dwarfed. And that house actually, the owner refused to sell it. So 5 years later, I did a story for Vanity Fair, and I went to the same spot.
Oh,
Or actually, it ran for the 5 year anniversary, so I had to obviously get there, a
sure.
couple of months earlier to do the story. And so, but I photographed it from the same angle, and so we could do it there and now to see what the progress was. The boat was gone, but that house was there, and they were building up the rest of the city around it
Mm.
with dirt. That's one of the solutions they have to try to mitigate future disasters, because the water will come in again.
Yes.
Um, and I'm going to go between the Olympics and Paralympics. I'm going to go back up there and try to get to that same spot.
Mm.
I know my metadata from the initial shot, and so I know it's an 85 millimeter lens. What f-stop, what time of day, and we'll try to shoot that again, so you really could see, the progress.
Mm.
But my love of Japan, I think, growing up on the West Coast, we're exposed. I was born in New York, but grew up in Tiburon in Northern California, and my dad worked for KCBS. And so we were, in Chinatown all the time, just fascinated by that, did martial arts for a long time, moved down to LA, obviously a lot of Asian culture there too. And so, and so I'm very drawn uh, toward the East, which is, it's actually our West, but to the,
Sure.
from the European perspective, from the east. But and I feel very at home here. When we have earthquakes like we did this morning, I'm not super thrilled about it. We get them in LA too.
Sure.
But you take the good with the bad, and so I did the hot spring series that started in the early 90s, and that wasn't a conscious thing to go do a series on something unique in Japan. It's just that I went on a trip and was exposed to it, and it's like, wow,
Mm.
I love this. And I
Mm.
had that mindfulness kind of feeling, because I could really just sit in these baths all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I started to photograph them, and sometimes we got permission, and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, and the people that own the place would say, okay, go ahead. If it was on the men's side, um, it's no big deal. If it's a konyoku, meaning mixed bathing, that's a different story. And of course, with Mika and her friends, my ex-wife Mika, her friends, uh, Mika really helped produce it, and then I have other friends that I continue to work with, and really. But if I didn't speak Japanese at all, there's no chance in the world that I could do this.
Yeah.
Who's this gaijin walking in here with a camera? But I'm part of the bathing experience too, and so it's not like I'm treating anybody as an object. We're all part of the same thing, and I shoot very, simply with one camera body and typically just a 28, millimeter lens, and just sort of try to capture the feeling. And black and white also just seem to it always feels more mystical anyway, and so I think that
you look through the images and that's what you feel, or when I look through the images, the black and whites, the grain in there, just the peaceful scene, it's sort of really, you can just be sort of in a moment and look through those images, and I'm sure that's where you were in your head when you were.
Oh yeah, well, I do think it conveys that, and I was mostly a black and white shooter up until around 2005 or so. I did not embrace digital early on at all. It was only when I went to North Korea for the first time that I thought, I can't really go in there with 50 rolls of film, in a lead bag. I could have, right? I might not be able to leave with 50 rolls of film.
I talked to Kurt Rogers about some of his photojournalist early days and leaving places with film and getting film out of countries and things like that. And stuff. I'm sure you all did it. It just blows my mind.
For sure, with lead bags and everything. But just, and I remember in Vietnam in the early 90s, not that we had any sort of problem, with Vietnam in the early 90s, but the guy was asking a lot of questions. And so I had some unused film. I said, would you like some film? And he goes, thank you. And then he goes, okay, go. So
there you go.
There you go. So he wanted some film. I've got film. I won't give him exposed film. He doesn't want exposed film. What's he going to do with that? So he just, I mean, it's just like, fine. That's not, and so, but 2005 is when I really moved over to color and digital, and never really looked back. And that's because I could have a lower, or a smaller footprint. And I think that I've really been constantly looking for that. I'm using, just like right now, I mean, talk about a small footprint, but like, it's 2 terabytes. This right here is unbelievable. That I have all my shooting, from OWC, the think tank bags. I'm actually carrying 2, one for lights, because with Matthew Jordan Smith and I are going to do a lighting thing later.
Oh, great.
Oh yeah. And then I've got my rolling bag. And so the camera backpack one is also an airport bag. And that's got all the lights. So I can really, this is the airport accelerator.
Yeah.
That's got all my lights in one bag.
Right. And I didn't actually put them there because I was calling you. I was trying to get stuff out, and then I just forgot to put them away.
Perfect. You see, and I got my guitar with me too, and so we got the exact setup. No, that is not the case this time. I actually.
I've got to have Wednesday is my my Zoom call kind of day. Like, I've got marketing meetings in the morning, and I've always got to have a guitar there. Just to, after marketing meetings, you just got to come down a little bit. And so
it's excellent. It's excellent. Well, is there a favorite song that you tend to play on there?
Well, because of my parents, I tend to go through the Pink Floyd catalog in my head.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, you know how to play Blackbird?
I used to be able to play Blackbird, and then when I lived over, so funny story, I'd stopped playing for a while. I used to play bass in a band.
Me too.
Really? And then
yeah.
I started playing a bit more guitar. I was working in IT for a television company overseas, and we had an office guitar, because our office was this weird office in this weird old building. It was great. We were away from everyone, and so that was one of the songs I taught myself between support calls. Have you turned it off and on again? And I could play it perfectly. And then I just stopped playing for a while, a few years, and I pick it up every now and then, and I'll try and play it, and I can play the first riff a little bit, but I just, I don't know, it's gone. I've started playing more bass.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's just something beautiful about that particular song. My friend
Oh,
Pete
catchy
is
bass.
a great guitarist, and so we used to play when I was over in Europe. He's from England originally, and moved over to the Loire Valley, where a bunch of expats are.
Oh wow.
We'd play, but I used to play in a band. I have a Fender Precision still, and it just sits there getting dusty. But I can't, same thing. But I can't get, and I'm left-handed. In fact, I was asked.
Oh,
Oh, oh, see.
I'm left-handed as well, but I play right-handed.
Ah, see, and I play lefty, and so I was asked to actually audition for Beatlemania
Ah,
uh, years ago, but I could play piano a little bit. I could play the bass. I could, I think I could, play any Beatles song. But I
fantastic.
have the worst voice in the world. In fact, I mean, people tell me to stop singing at a birthday party. Don't ruin it, like in a happy birthday, or at the national anthem. They almost stopped a Dodger game. It's like, who
Oh,
was that?
yeah. You
Don't
sir.
make fun of the national anthem. You, sir, in seat, D23. Stop singing. We're
Have
trying
you met
to.
Have you met Ted? Ted at Think Tank. He's our
Oh,
marketing
I know Ted via. I've met him, via
online.
emails all the time.
So he's in a band as well. Very musical. Yeah. He,
Wow.
he well, he plays bass. He plays guitar. He's loving his guitars at the moment, but he plays ukulele as well. It was funny when I was when we could travel.
Yeah.
We'd have an annual meeting at Think Tank, and I would always try and get at least a few days and go and stay with Kurt and Deanne. Beautiful place. I used to like Kurt loves getting up early, making coffee, and
Wow.
just peaceful where they are. It's beautiful. And then we'd wander downtown, and there was this one time I was walking through. I can't remember, it's Fairfax or somewhere there, and I look in the front window of this little pub, and there's like 25 people all playing ukulele together.
Huh.
Oh, this is fantastic. And I'm pretty sure Ted was in there. But he loves his ukulele, and he'd live in Hawaii, I think, if he could. Goes over there.
Wow. Right. That is the ukulele capital of the world.
Capital
So
World. Yeah.
that's right. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Yeah, we should have a think tank band.
Which I completely agree. Kurt's got some great music stories. Kurt plays guitar as well. I don't know if you know that. He's
Oh yeah. Well, no, but we met. I think last time I saw him, I know it might have been in Vegas, but before that we were in Portugal. I mean, it's amazing how you talk about photographers and reunions, and I was teaching a workshop over there,
Mm.
and Deanne was over there teaching a workshop too. I mean, it's just amazing. So that's how we really got to meet. Though, of course, we knew all the same people. It just
It's a
and
small
but
world.
it is, and it really is important too, because we do live in such a vacuum, and that it's great when there are conventions and things like that, or award ceremonies or things that we can get together or cover, and so you talk about is there there is the camaraderie here. There is what I call the photographer's dance, where everybody, most of the time, 99% of the time, really tries to be respectful and look out for the other photographers in terms of, am I blocking you? That's probably the most common thing you hear from everybody in a lot of different languages. In other words, everybody's here. You need to get your shot. Photographers are in, basically pens.
Mm.
But now a lot of people haven't shown up though because of COVID. You asked about COVID earlier. There's some spacing, so it's not sitting in every seat; it's every other seat. So there's a little bit of spacing things that they're doing here. When you walk into a venue, there's a disinfectant for your hands. That then you have your temperature checked. You show your ID. We have to do advanced ticketing
Mhm.
for venues, which, obviously when you have your ID, typically you don't have to, I mean, when you have your media credentials from the Olympics, you don't have to then get a separate ticket for something. But here you do, because they're trying to limit the capacity of each place, not just overall capacity. Obviously, we're not going to fill up an arena,
No.
but they don't want, 40 photographers in in a tight area.
Mm-hmm.
And so the numbers have been very low, but 85% of the people coming in for the Olympics um, have been vaccinated. And
Right.
so the problem here is not because of the people coming in necessarily, but the slow rollout of the vaccine. And actually, the numbers here are obviously still incredibly low for the density of Tokyo, but
Yeah.
they really are doing an excellent job about separating the Olympic people from the general public for the first 2 weeks. I mean, very strict. If you don't follow what you're supposed to follow, you could
You're
be
out.
asked to leave. You're out. And I think it happened to on the news. I heard about one person the other day, but people are really trying to make this work, and I think they really are working.
It's a heck of a unique situation.
It really is. And so, I mean, on paper, it would be like, well, this shouldn't be happening at all. I mean, what are we doing having the Olympics during a pandemic? But I think when all is said and done, I think it will have worked. I mean, we're most of the way through now. And I think it's working. And there's a lot of enthusiasm for it on the street. I also covered a protest too. I'm trying to I don't want to make decisions like, I haven't posted those photos yet. But there have been protests, and I can't blame anybody for that. But really, I think the protests might be better served in terms of, let's get the vaccine numbers up.
Yes. Yeah.
When you're down at 20-something%, and it needs to be,
It's the same.
way higher.
Yeah.
Which I'm amazed because Australia was doing so super well with it. I know with COVID. I mean, I don't mean the.
Oh no, Olympics. I think we've done pretty well in the Olympics too. I think.
Oh yeah, but I meant with keeping the COVID numbers down for a long time.
We did for a while. Yeah, I mean, compared to other places, like I talked to my friend Doug over in Vegas, and he was telling me when we were talking about it last week, he was saying, oh, they had 1,300 cases a day. And I think we had 14 cases here in Melbourne or Victoria, and we went into lockdown as a result of that.
I remember, yeah.
So they've been fairly strict on it, and it's restricted. That is one thing that, being a social media manager and seeing all of these photographers that can't go and work because they have to stay within 5 k's of their house. They're not allowed to have any contact like that. It's been really tough. It's been tough to watch.
Oh, I was shut down completely from all my workshops that I do around the world. But so a lot of stuff is planned for 2022. But what I did during that time is that, okay, I always go by one door closes, another opens. And so I started documenting Hollywood Boulevard on a daily basis, because that's sort of a tourism mecca. And what was it like during COVID? And it's very hard to have a perspective from within something. I mean, you think about what perspective means. It means seeing something from the outside. But I did sort of astral project and think, okay, once again, what will we look back at? You look at 1917, and though most people didn't really know there was a big pandemic then. But look at the photos that documented that. And that gives us, the history for that time. And so by getting out and documenting Hollywood Boulevard, and on my Instagram, I have some of those images.
Is that Naked Hollywood on your website?
Exactly. And my website, I really have to keep that up too, in terms of, but yeah, it's called Naked Hollywood is a series. And it's I don't know if that would be another book project. I mean, the latest book is on orangutans. And so I really do shoot a variety pack of things. But I did learn, and as you know, because you're an expert on social media, most people, you have to develop and show a certain look, or people get confused. But what I've learned, by speaking to some, experts in the field and people like yourself, is what I do is I put a number of images at one time from a project, and so it looks like they're just chapters, rather than here's a shot here, here's a shot there, and be all over the place. And so and when if it's a project that warrants it, then I move toward a book toward it, because I think that's still one of the great ways to present work. My friend Sandra Miller does the same thing.
Yeah.
You create bodies of work, and who knows, with the Olympics, it's still early on, but maybe it has a future for that. What I would do with it, these were sort of initially billed as sort of the reconstruction game. So they tied in for the Tohoku tsunami and earthquake, that's now 10 years ago.
Yes.
And so it's conceivable that I could see part of the book being focused on that. And now we have another, serious situation with the pandemic, but also the games at the same time. And I mean, the main thing for me now is to be shooting, and then to think, okay, what can I do with it besides just getting it out to publications now? What can I do with it later for posterity? And the edit will decide if it ends here, or if it just goes into stock, or if it's a project. But that's sort of my working methodology that so far has gotten me around pretty well. It ain't easy.
Well, if it works for you,
Yeah, and as you said earlier, there's so many amazing photographers here.
Yeah.
We learn from each other all the time, and I see how other people are doing it. And some people here, pick my brain about doing books, because that does seem to be an area that I seem to know how to do.
Right.
And for the listeners out there, for those that are interested, and when I teach workshops, I talk about this all the time. If you want to show an exhibit of your work, really think about putting a book together, even if it's just in like a blurb book. First of all, just the exercise of doing a book in that form is a great discipline. And then from there, you can shop your story around. And actually now these one-off books are such high quality. I don't do a book for sale that way. I still do traditional, print runs, or I work, because I created my own publishing house. I also, I've had 2 books out through Chronicle Books, Abbeville Press, Focal Press. So I know how it works. And so I would say for the viewers out there that are interested, do think in terms of putting a body of work together, one of these one-off things, and then shopping that around, and doors can open. And if not now, when?
Digital. Exactly. And I my wife says to me all the time, why can't I get to our photos and print them? I'm like,
well, there you go.
What do you mean? They're right there on that drive or that drive.
That's exactly right.
And they're all in raw format. Go for your life. And she's like, no. And it, you make me, I photographed, as I said, I'm not a professional, but I got the opportunity when we lived in the UK to photograph music, live music. I love music. It's my life is music, which sounds corny, but I love it.
Yeah.
Photographing music was something that I really enjoyed, and I had the opportunity just through shooting at pubs and working my way up to being a house photographer for one of the venues in the UK, and seeing bands. And I've got all of these photos, thousands and thousands of photos of bands sitting in a couple of hard drives. And
see, I've got an assignment for you then. See, you said it on live, live, but it's been recorded. So why don't you do a blurb book or whatever? In Australia is a popular way to do. Of course, it doesn't. There's now, no matter where in the world you are, you can use any company that does it. But why don't you do it? But stay focused. I mean, just like Michael Greco went back through his stuff of punk rock, and he did a formal book of the work, and so but you can with yours, it's a great idea, but in a physical form. I think I got to agree with your wife on this one. In fact, we've been talking about it for a while. We're really not too happy with some of your behavior, and we expect this.
It's funny that you mentioned blurb. Blurb. I don't know if you know Daniel Milner.
Oh, of course, really well. Sure, I know Dan. Yeah, I've known him for, wow, it's scary to think how 30 years maybe.
Oh, okay. So he's for those of you that don't know, and I don't know what Dan's been up to in the last X years, but the last time I met him, he was here doing. It was kind of like a promotional tour, but not a promotional tour for Blurb, and showing
Yeah,
people what they could do, like you just said, make a book.
yeah.
And this first video, like I spoke to Dave McIntyre last week, and I put his video on our YouTube channel, and Dan Milner's commented. So it's like something's going on here. Like Siri,
Oh, there you go.
me in. I've got to do
You're
a
meant to do it.
so
You're meant to do it. Well, Dan, I think I don't know. Isn't he still with Blurb? Maybe he's not. I
oh,
don't know.
I'm 100% unsure. I haven't connected with him in a long time, but it was great to see his comment there. I was like, hang on a minute. Yeah, it was
There you
good.
go.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. So there you
I
go.
was going to be down in Australia and we could have hung out, but I think because for the Head On Festival, they're going to use my orangutan photos
Okay.
in Sydney. But unfortunately, yeah, for me to come in, I would have to have a 2-week quarantine. Um,
You were here just before. Were you?
that's correct. That's yeah. I was just COVID had already started up, but it wasn't really known that well, and I was covering the wildfires,
Yeah.
the bushfires,
That's right.
Kangaroo Island.
Kangaroo Island. That's it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that was just beyond belief.
Oh, that's wild.
Just the horrors of what was going on with the animals there, especially the koalas, because it hit that particular area. The kangaroos, a lot of them were on a different part of the island, but it was sort of it was reminiscent, and I wrote about this in one of the stories that it sort of looked like the battlefield at Gettysburg, um, or for Australians and people from New Zealand who might have been like Gallipoli. You see the old photos, and the smell of death was everywhere.
Yes.
And so instead of humans, it was animals, which just devastating to see, of course, as well. And it was just so eerily quiet, and so your ears, you know different parts of your senses were being activated. So the ears, there was hardly anything to hear, but the smell was beyond.
It was very weird.
It was very weird. It's just horrible what happened there. And so, I mean, obviously, fires are part of a natural thing, but they're out of control, and so global warming, or is a very real thing, and uncontrolled burns. I mean, that gets us off, would get us into a whole nother subject, but we do have to pay attention to our nature, and how it's managed, and why things happen, and that's also, I mean, what the orangutan project is about is and that's something I could speak of. I don't know enough about the situation in Australia, but in terms of
those images are just amazing. Your orangutan portraits, like just how you shot them, and they're like what I equate to personality in their eyes, and the different looks between the orangutans. It's just, I mean, it's just weird. Some of them are looking straight into the camera. Some of them.
Many of them. Oh yeah. Well, 96. Yeah, 96.4 to 97% of the same DNA. They are, personality-wise, it's just unbelievable. Very individualistic personalities, which you see in the portraits. And I used a combination of Profoto and then Stella lights to illuminate them and to overpower the ambient light. And so the backgrounds would be dark. In certain places, I was able to actually bring a fabric backdrop, and then I didn't have to overpower the light. But I used tight grids, so the light and on a monopod, so the light would be directed just at them, and everything else would go dark. And it was hit and miss. Sometimes we couldn't quite get it, but that's where the technical, I mean, and photographers, even though digital does so much for us, we still really have to, if you really want to succeed, you can't rely on, taking a frame and looking at it. You have to instinctively know, um, you look at a situation and you roughly can say, okay, this is going to be roughly this f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, know your exposure triangle, what's it going to take to make the background going dark. I mean, especially at the Olympics when, shooting, there was a long jump in the shade, and then on the track, some running events in the sun. And so to know how many stops differently, right away to move back and forth. And of course, you can have different cameras, but let's say you want the same lens for both shots.
Mhm.
But of course, you do anything enough, if you really pay attention, you'll do it. But it can't be, you shoot, then you take a look, you shoot, then you take a look.
You got to know your craft.
You got to know your craft,
I
no
think
matter what you do.
there's some camera bag brand that has a catchphrase, be ready before the moment. Don't
There
know.
you go.
Yeah, that mob.
You have to be, and it's interesting with the different bags you make. I've been using, when I was in Jordan, for instance,
Nice.
the bags that the mind shift bags that I don't have to put on the ground.
Oh yeah.
Where here everything's so spotless, I could
Lay it
eat
down.
off the ground here,
Yeah.
right? But
Fantastic.
but in Jordan with all the sand,
Mhm.
when I was shooting, um, and doing some rock climbing and sand, it was great to have the mind shift bags there that I could sort of move around, have forward, pull my equipment out,
Yeah.
and
Rotation.
yeah, and rotation, because sand and cameras do not get along
They're not
very
friends.
well.
No.
They're not friends. They're
No.
not friends. Everything's different. So that's where the backpacks, don't need wheels in sand. They, yeah. But also, and so I sort of, before every assignment, I really think out what I need, and just like when I went down to Singapore and Borneo, and I knew I could light, I brought one of the bags, and you would know more than me, where you put the stands, the long roller, really,
Like a logistics manager or the production manager.
you got it, it's production manager.
Right. Yeah.
A fantastic bag for that. And so that's, with stands, I mean, I can get everything in. And so, but you get a backpack, because really, uh, you've got two hands and a back. And so I really always try to limit to 3 bags
Oh, yeah.
at most when I'm going somewhere. And that's the case here. Otherwise, something can accidentally get left behind. Shouldn't be carrying
Oh, yeah.
that much anyway. There's a diminishing return things as well. And so typically I will have a backpack. Though, as I said, since my manager hurt my back here, here, though I'm pretty much back up and running, but it's really the roller bag that I turn to completely
Yeah.
to get going again. And I mean, just like tonight, to head over to track and field, not be running around, but roll in the bag and I mean, and now I've got in one bag, I've got the two camera bodies, a 500, 5.6, all Nikon, so the Nikon 5.6.
Yeah. And you've got
The
the
500.
D6 with you at the moment. I saw you were using a D6 the other day.
Yeah, I'll show it to you. Actually, this is one of the great things about the Olympics. So typically I shoot with an 850. I don't need the speed of a D6, but because Nikon's here, and so this is it right here. But look at the size lens, right? And so this is why I can put this in the bag. So 500, 5.6, 300 f4, the 70 to 200 2.8, the 24 to 70 2.8. I've got a 20 fixed and a 14 fixed, all in one bag.
Options. Yeah.
Oh yeah, options, and also one bag. That's the thing. And now at the venues they have storage lockers for photographers, and so that some venues don't want you to be running around rolling with a bag. At the big stadium, it doesn't seem to be a big deal. But yeah, size and flexibility is really the name of the game, and especially uh, as one gets older, I think.
Come on,
You,
mate. Come on.
okay, well, I work out all the time, and I'm still.
Yeah.
And there you can see my nunchuck thing we did in China during a workshop with Sandro Miller and stuff. You can see I'm
Oh,
still.
really? Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm hanging there. I'm hanging in
Oh,
there.
that's great. We
Yeah.
we've been running an hour now, and
Oh wow.
we should probably wrap it up. I could go on because I've got a million questions for you, and I don't even know that we touched on the questions that I sent you across. It's just been a great chat.
Well, it has, Simon, and I'm glad we could do this, and I appreciate that. Left-handed bass players, how many are there?
We
of
have to
us?
stick together.
Yeah, well, Sting and Paul McCartney,
Yeah,
you and me.
one of my favorite parts of Italy, out where Sting has his. He did that actually. It was the day of 9/11. He did a live concert at his place in Italy. I can't remember which album it was, but it was just so beautiful. And they weren't going to go ahead because everything had just kicked off in New York.
Wow.
And they did a live video of it. You couldn't get it anywhere for ages, but he had some amazing musicians in that just blew my mind. Sorry, there you go. Look, I went off on a tangent.
See, there you go. Good. Well, see, and then you got me thinking, because you talk about bass players, Jaco Pastorius, one of my favorite. Oh, he's under Stanley Clark.
Alembic basics.
Oh, so many. All right, we can go. Yeah, we'll have to do our music segment another time.
Let's do that. I love that.
Good. Thank you, Simon. Well, just don't let me sing. You don't want to do it. You do not. No, you do not want it. Even karaoke bars won't let me in. There's pictures of me in Japan.
On the door.
It says sorry. Yeah, on the door says with a and I don't blame them. I agree completely.
I love it, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Much. Been great to chat to you.
Great talking with you
too. Hope to speak to you again soon.
For sure.
All right, mate.